Hi, I'm Austin Wintory, and this is the Game Maker's Notebook. For this week, which was recorded live in person in Las Vegas at the DICE conference, I spoke with Aurélien Piters and Maxime Touchon, the audio director and senior sound designer for Asobo, who had recently launched Plague Tale Requiem, which was up for a bunch of awards at DICE and elsewhere. They have done magnificent work on this and the previous game. I asked them all sorts of questions, not least of which was how on earth you sound design for tens of thousands of dynamically reactive rats without having to create Foley situations that are just pure nightmare fuel. It was fascinating to get into that with them. And also, I asked them plenty of questions about their work with my colleague, the fantastic and ever creative Olivier Deriviere, who wrote also very lauded and special music for the games. So I hope you'll enjoy it. I certainly love getting to know them and hearing about their process. Enjoy. You
saw him behind him, monsieur! He's going to catch us! Keep running!
Bloody brambles!
This is your tower! It's evil!
You're going too fast for me.
Please, Mother said to try to exhaust him.
Of course, from now on, we need to isolate him.
You want to lock him away?
Do you know what your brother is capable of?
Hugo is condemned.
The last threshold means the death of the carrier.
It's starting all over again.
Not starting. Spreading. Hugo.
Hugo, my brother needs your help, and the rats are already there!
Control your flame, Protector. Others are burned in it.
The island! It's where I must go! It's where I will be fixed, Amicia!
I will do what's good for you. I will. I'm not ready for this.
No one could be ready for this.
Please, Hugo, stop this! This is a constant reminder that I should kill you.
I know where your island is. Keep me alive until we get there.
By the way, this land is under the Count's law. Be nice.
Feel free to enjoy La Cuna. Brighter days are the best time for it.
Fuck it! I don't need you!
What is wrong with me?
You'll end up wanting to kill me too.
What happened?
It's the rats.
This world hurts. And it keeps hurting. And you want to hurt it back. But it's a fight you cannot win, Amicia.
They must die!
They are dead!
Who do you think you are to defy me?
I'm Amicia Jeroen!
Hello, gentlemen. Welcome to DICE.
Hello.
How is it treating you?
Fine. Been in Vegas for the last 3 days, and it's pretty cool for us.
Yeah?
Yeah.
You don't have the bloodshot eyes of somebody who's super hungover from nonstop drinking, so you're clearly not doing Vegas correctly.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
But that's okay. There's still the day is still young. We can still.
Yeah.
There's an award show ahead in which your work is nominated. Yes.
Yeah.
Unless I'm embarrassingly mistaken.
No, yeah, you're right.
No.
We're really happy to be nominated for the music, for the audio design, and for the tech. Yeah,
Yeah.
3 nominations.
Yeah. Well, I'll just say up front, I am a huge fan of these Plague Tale games.
Thank you.
So a couple years ago, I had the occasion to do one of these podcasts with Olivier, and I had known his music for years, maybe since Remember Me, maybe. But it occurred to me, I hadn't played any of the games he had scored. I just knew the music. So when we scheduled it, I was like, I have a month or something like that I want to go play. And I think Streets of Rage had just come out.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, I'm going to use that as my first. And then I went and played bits and pieces of just about every game he had scored because, I see him as a kind of kindred spirit with somebody who's very, very passionate about interactive music design.
Yeah.
And I'm sure we'll talk about that stuff. But it was one of those where of all the games, the one I would play them for maybe an hour to get a feeling for them because I didn't have a huge window of time. Plague Tale was the one where I just couldn't stop and I had to beat the game. And I couldn't let it go. And then I was chomping at the bit when the sequel was announced and came out. I just love them. I love everything about them. And so I want to hear all about it. And you were there on the prior. You both were with Asobo for both titles, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
It is my first job on Plague Tale in a sense. It's where I came in Asobo and where I worked for the first time for this game.
Wow!
So I was
welcome to the industry in the best possible way. That's amazing.
Yes.
That's amazing. Okay, well then, why don't we just use that as a kind of launch pad? Then, what was your life up to that point? What led you to that? What kind of things? I'm always interested in also what childhood kind of moments kind of sparked this interest that then led you to this kind of work. And also help me, because I don't actually, forgive me that I didn't know this in advance, but I don't actually know what your specific sort of duties were individually. I just think of you collectively as audio for the company, but I don't know. So walk me through all that and just bring me up to speed. But we'll start with, if you don't.
With you.
Yeah,
Right. I'm at the sound design, so he's the game audio director. So I made ambiences, animation, and recently more and more cinematics work, like more linear work finally, and that's it. All aspects we have to help narrative for the voice parts to really. I don't know what to say about it.
Well, so stepping back in terms of, sound design is obviously not one of those things that every kid discovers and pursues. So what led you to this?
I mean, I was for my studies, I made computer science.
Wow.
And
okay.
I feel kind of boring in it in a way. So one of my teachers said, "Hey, you make music. You love to record sounds on the student films or other thing like that." So he said, "Oh, go to this school in France called Engmin, and this is the place where." Every student came to create project together. So there was some graphists, producers.
You were what age?
What?
How old were you at this time?
I was 21. And that's it. I came here and that's how can I say that? I learned it myself. I learned to make sound design myself. And I go to the school and I made sound design for a project with others who didn't know how to make a game. And that's how I learned it. And after that, I go to Asobo.
I love how it's just, I should do this. And then you apply and then now you're doing it. It's so simple. It's amazing, but
it's a bit of luck.
No, it's not luck, Max, because it's like the most famous video game school in France. It's hard to get into this school. There's a rough selection, a hard selection. And so when I recruited Max, he was my intern. And so we knew that this school, there was a lot of good sound design people.
Like it's a reliable source.
Yeah, it's a reliable source. And so, it's not really luck. It's talent, I would say. Yeah.
Well, it's often, if luck is being in the right place at the right time, if you can get yourself into the right place, the right time will happen eventually. It sounds like that's pretty much exactly what you did. You made yourself. And that kind of answers one of the questions I was curious of. I kind of guessed when you were talking about doing computer science, you were maybe already interested in games, because there's obviously sound designers who go into film and television and things like that, or even like live theater sound and things like that. And games are mysterious to folks like that often, because the idea of sound design within dynamic systems is kind of like too much sometimes. So, but that, clearly you were already thinking in that way.
A word of it. Yes.
Yeah. Well, so then before we sort of move too close to present day, then what's your version of this story?
Yeah, so it's funny because there's some similarities with Maxime. I've been for 13 years in the industry, and at the time I was also doing some computer science, and I was like a bit like Max. I didn't feel really right in it. I was doing a lot. I was a synth nerd. I was doing a lot of stuff on my computers and stuff, and music, sound design, and so I did find a school in France that did some interactive audio. At the time, the school of Maxime was not created really like it is now, and so I found another formation, and I did my formation, and then Asobo was like 6 years old or 7 years old. They were in need of some audio guy. We met. There was some connection with Asobo, and that's it. I was the first audio guy at Asobo.
Oh wow!
and that's the story. So,
clearly a good place to work. If you're now, how many years later?
I was 13 years later.
Wow!
Yeah,
amazing.
It's been a long time. Yeah.
What's the size of the studio now?
We are 300 almost.
I guess it's nothing like when you started. Then.
Yeah. When we started, we were like 30 or something. Yeah. So. Like you said, it's a bit of luck. It's a bit of meeting the right people, some connections with the people, and some luck.
Now, it sounds like neither of you kind of said this outright, but you both seem to hint at the idea that you were kind of musicians, at like either, if not pursuing that professionally, at least it's a big part of your life. Is that a fair way to put it? Yes.
Yeah. Totally. Totally.
It's nothing to be ashamed of. We're all musicians here.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. I think video games was the best for me because like I really into tech stuff and I love creating things, and I'm really fond of music, and so it was natural. It felt really natural for me. I mean, the first years I was like, okay, that's my job. I love it so much. It's cool, and I'm getting paid for this job, so it's. I'm happy to do this, and
it's a chance to.
Yeah. So like you said, at first, definitely it's a music and a blend of technologies and music and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, the reason why first off, I totally agree. Obviously, I've stayed on the music side. I'm not a sound designer by any stretch. That's not really my field, but I have a great admiration for it. And I also see it as a real cousin to the musical process, and great sound design is creative in all the same ways, it would seem to me, especially when you look at like the classics, the Ben Burt types who to say that that's somehow not art or not even musical in a way is crazy. I think it's just so powerful and amazing and inspiring. And so, but I'm always fascinated when there's a musician who then decides to kind of focus in on sound design. Because I meet, especially in games, I meet folks like that a lot. The number of times where I get hired for a project and I'll have my initial call with like the audio director who might also be working in a capacity as senior sound designer or supervising or something. And we have a Zoom call and I open it up and there's like a guitar rack immediately behind them. Or I see like a big, Matrix Brute or something right next to there. And it's always fascinating how it's not usually the other way around. If I'm talking to a composer or musician, I don't see like a Foley pit in the background of their Zoom calls or whatever would be the equivalent. And so I'm always fascinated what makes somebody who is a musician, I start to say just passionate about music, but that's not enough. It's someone who's truly a musician say, no, I want to zero in on sound design. I mean, did you have a moment where you were debating, do I want to pursue music, or how did you choose this?
It's different because, I mean, musician and being a composer is not the same thing, I guess. So
yeah, I agree. It's similar, but not the same.
Yeah, exactly. And so I love keeping music as a hobby, and I'm really happy with sound design. I think when I started, what I learned about audio and stuff, I learned it through music and some music tutorials and stuff, because obviously at the time there were not that many sound design tutorials.
Yeah,
now
sure.
you can it's, I mean, crazy the amount of stuff you can learn online on how to become a sound designer and stuff. So at the time, it was really during my school, I guess, with interactive audio, messing up with Max MSP and stuff. I didn't know there was this kind of creation possible. And to be honest, it's just that I love doing stuff, creating systems in Wise, working with interactive audio, and so yeah, it felt really natural for me. And then I guess I love microphones. I love, like you said, maybe sound designer, we love messing with gear, but I mean, musician, I mean, Olivier is the same. So I wouldn't be able to explain it really. It's hard to say. It's just, I guess it's life. You have some opportunities and you love what you do. You're getting good at what you do. Maybe if I had the opportunity to compose music non-stop, I would be a composer. I don't know. It's just I have this opportunity and I'm happy in this opportunity. So yeah, it's a good question, but it's hard to answer, to be honest.
I mean, is your answer the same or similar? Or?
For me, the music is too personal to be professional.
Interesting.
I'm not really good.
You don't want someone like him giving you feedback on your music. You prefer to keep it to your.
No, he gave me feedback for the mix of my music because I have a lot to learn, and I don't know. I want to experiment things, play guitars.
Have fun.
But for me, if I have someone to give my music to, it's different.
Sure, totally.
Music for me and sound design is kind of close. So sound design for others, all right.
Sure. No, yeah, I get it. Obviously, I would never begrudge people kind of make of it whatever works for them. But it's just always fascinating to meet someone who has the skill set or the talent for it, but chooses to keep it over here, for something more personal or for a hobby or for a thing with their families. Because I have friends who they play in bands, they do shows and things like that, and they work in games, but they would never want to write music for games. And I find that I just am endlessly always trying to learn about that, because I was the opposite. The moment I discovered music, it was like, that's what I want to do. I want that. I want to make it so that there's no other possible way I can, pay for food. If I can't write music, I will starve. That's how I will try to force my career to happen. And
but also I would say the cool things as we get to do in small studios is we work a lot with composers. And so when I work with Olivier and when we talk about interactive music and stuff, I still get this music contact and we're still in. I mean, Max, when we play the game, say, "What do you think of this music? Maybe try it here, try it." Yeah, there's some exchange with the team, and we keep this relationship to music.
And when we make some design, we always think about is there some music in this scene or not.
Yeah.
We have to balance both, so music is never so far from us.
Yeah,
that's not entirely common, which is nice to hear. Often the sound is done as if that's the only audio, and then the music will come in and they immediately start fighting each other. So it's nice to. So let's go back to the first Plague Tale for a moment, and I'm curious what obviously if you. In particular, in your case, I'd be curious, you joined the company. I'm sure the game might have already been started.
It was the beginning of the production.
We did the vertical slice and we started doing the production of the game. So we had the release date and so on. And we knew that we will release the game in 1 year and a half or something.
So you were there for most all of it then?
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
So one of the things that's always interesting is just how much sometimes things have to change over the course of development, and something that isn't working gets cut, another thing turns out to be way more awesome than was expected, maybe it's expanded, all those kinds of things. To the degree that you can say, how much did this evolve from that early day? Because it strikes me, I ask because as a player, I'm purely as just a fan, it feels like a game, both of them have such strong vision. There's very specific narrative beats, and the mechanics are so interwoven with that it's hard to imagine it wasn't really well planned. It just seems like a game that has to have been. But I'm curious how that's parsed out, from your angle, who's there the entire span of production.
You go.
You go.
So yeah, I guess the team had the vision of what we wanted to do with Plague Tale. I mean, at Asobo at the time, we were doing a lot of contracting work. We are doing games for Pixar. We are doing games for Microsoft. We work a lot on HoloLens titles. And we had the opportunity to create our game. I mean, we had sometimes between projects, it was like a background task project, when we have some time.
Wow, I never knew that.
Yeah. We wanted to do. David, the creative director, we wanted to create this kind of third-person game. We already had the skills because we did some Pixar games on the tech side and stuff. And it was a project we had for some time. And then we were able to create a small demo of the game. And all the core elements were here. So we had this relationship with Amicia and Hugo. We had the dark medieval age. It was really grounded. And then we had the rats. That was there at the beginning of the...
How could it not? I mean, it's hard to imagine if, 6 months before ship, we thought, what if there's rats?
And that was the starting point of the game. And before even having some puzzles or, game design around the rats, we had these these technical things. I mean, we have a lot of great programmers at Asobo, like we have our own engine. So these guys are always looking for ideas and stuff, and they were able to create this fluid, like the rats are some kind of fluid. And so we had this Amicia, Hugo, Medieval Age, and the rats, and this vision of what we wanted to do. We wanted to do the game in France. It was easier, obviously, for us. We are not like, okay, we'll do the game in the US, and it will be wrong. I mean, we don't know the US, we don't live in the US, so we did it in France, in the Bordeaux region. So it was easy for us, just for our team, for us, it was natural for us. And so we started
It's funny how that's so convenient because it's easy for you all. It's relatively nearby. It's relatively familiar. And then for the rest of the world, it feels novel and fresh and totally different than, English countryside or the American West or all these really familiar environments. It's a kind of a funny, perfect situation to be able to just lean on what's comfortable, I guess, in that way.
Yeah, obviously, we knew that. I mean, we won't be able to do American settings. We have to do it away. We knew that we are not able to create cinematics like American movie do, like American games do. We had to do our own stuff and try to be personal about it in every area of the game. So of course there was a lot of influence. Last of Us was a big influence. All the Naughty Dog's games. It's really obvious. And
in your position were you audio director on the first as well?
Yeah.
So were you involved in the casting or in the production? Because I will say I really adore their performances in these games as well. Like they're unusually if the goal is to make you empathize with a character, and especially like in the case of Hugo, you feel this primal need to protect them. You really, really achieved that. If just the casting alone, never mind how the mechanics feed into it and all the hand holding and all the rest of it, but even just purely as a voice performance. So what was that process?
So the process was David, the creative director. We had some discussion with Seb, the writer of the game, and David wanted children. He wanted very young children. He said, okay, we need to have very young children so that we can protect him and create this relationship between the sister and the young brother. And at the time, we did not have the budget to cast actors and so on. So we did the demo was recorded using the son and the child of employees. So we had the daughter of Stéphane or IT, and we have the son of Thierry, an animator of the game. They were kind of the same age. So we directed these young kids, and so we did a lot of take. And at some point, the kids, they were able to deliver something like honest, like children and adolescents they can deliver, because they don't calculate. They have, if you put them in the good mood, they will deliver and they have fun doing it. And so we were like, okay, it's working with amateur actors. And when we did we did the demo in French, obviously. And,
that was going to be another one of my questions.
Yeah, we did the first one. All the first production of the Plague Tale Innocence was done in French, writing in French. And then we casted Charlotte with Amicia. It was his first role. I think she was 16 or 17.
Wow.
Yeah, and so it was her first game. And now 6 years later, she's like 23. I don't remember exactly her age. And there was Logan. He was like a young kid at the time. And
he sounds like he's pretty much Hugo's age. I mean, he sounds incredibly...
Maybe a bit older, but basically it's the same age. And and then they started the recording. I didn't do all the recordings. Then we have a team handling the recording, and the narrative. Seb was in all the session for the kids. But at the very beginning, that was it. That was the kids of employee and doing a demo. And okay, it's working. We have some emotions with these kids, and maybe we can do a game.
It was a risk, but it was really refreshing to have
to be
kids doing stuff.
To be honest, we were like, okay, it's crazy. We won't manage to drive a young kid, like for Hugo especially.
Oh, if he had been a bad actor, the game would have been really like hit in the knees, because you're so dependent on how he makes you feel just from the sound of his voice and the way he cries out for help and things, that it does so much to you emotionally, just that alone. And what I find interesting is that it actually, in a way, The Last of Us is another good example of where this can be done really well, when the performances and the writing is good enough that their performances have something to actually perform, and it's not just you there, there's actual meat. It's amazing how much you can get emotionally from that without having to rely on sound design or music to do all the work for it. Because sometimes the actors, I mean, think about just the history of games. There were no lines initially, so music and sound were the sole ways to get any kind of emotion. Now we can have proper actors. But I can only imagine how you might have had to change your approach if you were like, these actors are terrible, but we got to just roll with it, I guess, because we've committed. I mean, was there ever any debate to not do it in English? Like, did you consider...
So, it's a fun story. We did some recording with English actors, with some tests at the beginning, with the English accent. And it felt a bit wrong or weird, because there was some French church with a London accent. And then we did some American lines, and it was also weird because we had some American people at the company. So we were a bit embarrassed with the accent thing at the time. And so we said, okay, let's do it with French accent. Because some other games did it, like The Witcher, they had some European accent.
Sure.
So Charlotte, she knew a bit of French. So
where's she from?
She's from London.
Oh, really?
All the cast of the English version, they are from London, most of them.
That's so funny.
Yeah. And on the first game, we did this kind of French accent. It didn't turn out so French most of the time. Some people said, it sounds some kind of European-ish.
Yeah, that's the thing. When I, like Hugo, I always kind of got a slightly British, but it's not like Oliver Twist kind of British, He sounds, it's interesting. Broadly European is an interesting way to describe it, because that's not even a thing, right?
No.
Because German and Swedish and Norwegian, everybody's their own flavors, right? And sometimes really distinct. French being among the most recognizable accents in the world. So there was a French version. I mean, most companies get localized, but in this case, it's interesting where the localization into French is actually the home version. So was that a separate, how did you even approach that?
So yeah, we did.
We've never even tried. It would be interesting to play it this way.
Yeah. Some people are playing the game with voiceover in French.
With like subtitles. Like play with English subtitles in the French.
Exactly.
It's like watching anime. You're supposed to watch it in Japanese, right? It feels weird to watch the dubs, at least for me. But I never tried to play Plague Tale in French.
Yeah, but
people wanted to play in French to be immersed. In the French.
But the version was we did some English, French, and German. I think 3 audio localization.
For Innocence.
Yeah, for Innocence. Yeah.
Right,
and I also writing, but it's done in French and then translated and then recorded in English. And then we did the French version in Paris.
So one of the things that I'm specifically curious about is that obviously one of the big famous instant things about these games is the rats. And they're the only... Like I did a game called Abzu where we had these dynamic fish where they would have like tens of thousands of fish on screen at a given time. And for these bait balls, and they had to do a really clever thing with animation in order to make that possible for any normal computer to do and look believable. And I would imagine that you all had to do something similar on the tech and animation side because there's just like tens of thousands of rats.
Yeah.
And their behavior is extremely dynamic. It's not just one single block of animation that's cycling. They you can interact down to the individual rat, basically. So sound design then becomes this question of obviously, I mean, you already obviously had to solve this problem. So walk me through the difference between we need 10,000 individual emitters with individual rats versus a block, and also knowing that it has to be so dynamic to the player and they have all these behaviors because you can threaten them, you can attack them, they can attack you. There's a lot that has to happen. How did you even break this down? Did you have to invent new witchcraft to make this possible?
I wouldn't say witchcraft, but that's exactly the question we had at the time. Obviously, we didn't put one emitter on each rat. So basically, it's pretty simple. It's just some box around I think 2 meters by 2 meters. And there's a number of rats in this box. And we know how many rats there are in this small box. And so there's 1 emitter per box. And we know...
but that would also mean that in a particularly crazy scene, there might be like 20 of these boxes then.
We have a limit of box. We have some priorities, like which box are the most important boxes, like the closest.
Yeah.
The player where we can see the boxes with the camera and the viewport. And so we know the status of each box, like rats are idle, are attacking, are eating, are fleeing. Like we have a state machine for each box of rats. So
it can be the box can have more than 300 rats.
Yeah,
in 2 meters for 2 meters.
So it means we have for rats 6 emitters or something, 6 or 8. I think on the second one we had more CPU. I think we went for 5,000 rats to 300,000 with the next gen. So
300,000.
Yeah.
I mean, there's definitely some scenes. But I always assumed those were a little bit more pre-baked, like when you're in the town and it's like a wave of them. There's obviously no dynamic variety. That's like a set piece. That's a sequence,
It's a blend of the two.
Technology. Yeah. For the cinematics, it's like pre-calc rats blended with some real-time rats.
Right.
But in gameplay, it's real-time rats.
And how did you even approach this Foley-wise? I mean, did you go and find an animal wrangler and get 200,000 rats and wave fire at them? I mean, how do you even do this? I imagine there's laws that also really
so
like animal cruelty laws and things that are are likely to
So I watch a lot of movies, and there was some crazy movies with rats, but most of the time, all the movies, the sound effect wasn't convincing for the kind of game we wanted to do. It was like it was not really horror or scary or
they're kind of adorable sounding in isolation. Like even I lived in New York City and you'd see these subway rats down in the track, and they're the size of this water bottle, and they're disgusting, but they're also somehow kind of adorable.
Yeah.
And if I saw 20,000 of them at once, there'd still be an element of the sound they make is kind of cute. So you have to, I would think, manipulate it.
Yeah, and we wanted to feedback the different states of the rats. So we needed to understand just by sound, like, okay, they are going to attack. Okay, they are idling. They're only making like the foley sound, like it's like some kind of squish sound. I think I used some percussion loop that I pitched for the step of the rats. I added some squish stuff, and at one point, I found that some pig sounds. I modified some pig sounds, screaming. Is that?
Wow, interesting.
Yeah, and
sort of giant rats.
Exactly. Yeah, and when you take like some screaming like from a pig, and it's like screeching sound, and yeah, I remember the first demos that there was some kind of tech demos with the rats moving like a fluids and stuff. I remember Sébastien, the writer of the game, saying, "Okay, it works. It's really." It's really screeching, and it's
it's unpleasant in an interesting way. You know?
And that was also part of what I was afraid of during the first games. Okay, if you keep hearing the rats screaming at you for like 15 hours, we'll have a lot of problems. That was also the interesting part of the equation, is how to manage this. The boringness factor, I think we call it.
Well, like fatiguing, I would think.
Yeah, the boredom. We had some boredom RTPCs. We curated the system, like, because obviously it's a game. We can't mix like a movie. Like, okay, we don't want to hear the rats here and here. If you've been around rats screaming aggressively at you, it depends on the statue. I think it's a timer. I think it's 10 seconds or something. The rats are only the screaming are fading out, and you only hear the foley sound. So
you feel that because obviously there's a lot of puzzles involving navigating the rats, where but it's an interesting challenge because you don't want them to ever stop feeling dangerous, because of course, if you just take one wrong step, they'll kill you. So if you completely release, and like, I'm trying to remember, in my mind, they never stop making noise. So you're saying it goes to pure footsteps.
Yeah.
Interesting. It's funny how in the memory it is not that, but it probably would be very grating after a while.
Yes, it's a good sign if you don't remember, to be honest, because otherwise,
it's really smooth, the transition between and calming down.
Yeah. Did you have to tune that? I imagine you probably played a lot with how long that timer and how to kind of just manage these RTPCs.
I mean, it's a fluid, so it's a physical fluid. So even in the second game, we had to tweak values. I remember tweaking values even depending on the situation, the level design situation, the rats were not sounding the same, or maybe at one point they were stacked and they were like 500,000 in a box. So it wasn't working right in this case. So we had to always adjust, find the edge case. And it was the same for the code. I mean, we had some issues where rats were stacking and stuff, obviously. And we had to find the perfect, the best way to make the sounds work. And you had of opposite the music of because there was the cello stuff for the rats.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question. Yeah. Is sort of, I'm very curious your side of it. Like I said, I've had this conversation with Olivier, and there's a lot I'm curious about how you integrate that, because one of the things that he's very passionate about is designing interactive music systems. Now, a lot of times that's something a lot of composers are basically told when they're hired. Here is what we've set up. So these are the specs of the music that I need, right? That's often how that goes. With someone like him, that would probably be a waste, because that's his big passion. So how do you make space for that? And how do you what's your workflow, knowing, okay, we tried it this way, but now we want to actually set up a volume that makes the music this, and like, it's probably a lot more collaborative. How is it? What's that experience like? Were you accustomed to that prior to Innocence? And
Prior to Innocence, now most of the time we are doing some Pixar games, so we were working with some Disney composers and stuff, and so we were delivering them some specific music rules. Okay, we need this, and the music needed to be validated by Pixar and stuff. So yeah, with Olivier we had this freedom, and like you said, it was really a relationship with Olivier. And okay, what do you want to do, Olivier? What do we need what do we want to tell with the creative director, David? And okay, for this sequence, we want to tell this. We don't even talk about music. Just what do you want to achieve at this point? And then we have a discussion, maybe a bit more technical with Olivier. Okay, go ahead with the music. I won't remove the SFX. It's not the focus. Okay, go ahead, put the ambience back. It's more about the sound design stuff now here. And it was like that for the whole game. It's a very linear game, obviously. There are some stealths. I think the interactive music is mostly on the stealths. Like we have a lot of RTPCs and stuff to make the...
You can feel it when the guys see you and they're in like the question mark mode of Metal Gear Solid, you know, they don't have the exclamation point. They are suspicious of where you are. You can very much feel the real-time shift in the music in those moments. That's the more systemic.
Exactly.
I would think.
We had a lot of linear music and a lot of interactive music for this action sequence. And it was really a relationship, to be honest. It was very simple. Just we having some calls with Olivier and say, do this. And I found these textures, these cello textures with Eric Maria, the cellist. And what was convenient, I guess, is that Olivier were recording at his studio and didn't need to record at Abbey Road or something. We are very flexible because the musician will come to his studio and the soundtrack of Plague Tale didn't need a whole orchestra. So, it was easier for.
And since you mentioned the use of cello, and there's a lot of more kind of medieval and Renaissance type, like the viol de gamba and things like that. How much was that, based on what you're saying, it sounds like those were his pitches.
Yeah.
Did you offer some kind of suggestions or guidance? That obviously that's very typical. So
we wanted cello. I mean, we did some music research with David and before even working with Olivier. And we said, okay, here's the soundtracks that we like. We feel these textures will be good. We feel...
How did you arrive at that?
So, to be honest, I recall... I did videos with some concept art of the game. We were only having some concepts, and I did audio research, music research videos where we did put some ambience, some music textures, some taken from various movies, games, and I remember that we found a movie. I don't recall the name of the movie. It's just. Where the soundtrack was really spot on the cello sound. I think the name.
The Witch? No. Not The Witch.
It was a novel. The composer is Australian.
Australian?
Yeah.
From a film? The most famous Australian film.
We talk about it a lot.
We talked about it. I have but anyways, there was some kind of cello sound that David really liked. And we were like, there may be something interesting in this. And then it was like the seed for Olivier. It was because Olivier, obviously, he wants to do he has his creative approach. And
right, exactly.
And he wanted to give us some stuff for games. He wanted to bring something to just not only do the music. And it was a match with how we work. So we had this kind of good relationship to work with him. And he said, okay, you need viol de gambe. Okay, I found some crazy textures with Eric Maria because he worked on Vampire. Just before Plague Tale, it was funny. He did Vampire. It was a cello game too. And then we come to him and we say cello. He said,
yeah.
But to be honest, it was all luck because he knew this crazy cellist, Eric Maria from the Ensemble Intercontemporain of Paris, and he did the whole soundtrack. All the cello are, he did some recording, some layering, and basically that was,
Yeah, it pays off, obviously, and it's always fascinating to hear. So then one of the big questions is always, when going to then make a sequel, how do you expand? How do you, we'll talk about the music, because obviously the vocals are a big shift and really striking in the sequel. Really loved the choir, but the sound, the gameplay itself obviously is trying to kind of expand. It feels bigger. It's a lot more lively of a world. You actually see like towns and people in a far more lively way than the first game. And I wasn't sure if that was just a function of presumably a bigger budget and having more opportunities, but how did it look from your perspectives? You've both now, shipped the first one. I assume that production started pretty quickly into a sequel.
Totally.
So then what were the biggest challenges on, okay, how do we do it again, but bigger and better and more awesome?
Yeah, so when we finished Innocence, we had a look obviously at all the reviews and what didn't work, what did work, what we wanted to add, what the creative director wanted to add.
What did you think didn't work? If I'm allowed to ask you that.
I think what did work is what didn't work. I guess we were really limited. We were a very small team, and so we weren't able to go crazy on the AI with the guards. With the action sequence, it was a bit
facial animation.
Yeah, facial animation. We didn't have the big budgets to. We knew we could do better with a better budget, but we were like, okay, we want less frustration. We want more actions. We want a gameplay that is larger. I think the term I would say it's more open for everything. In terms of the place you visit, like you said, you met some people, some big openings, and we knew from almost the beginning that we were doing on next gen. So we knew that we had the budget to. Okay, we can. Let's see where we can get, because at the time the PS5 wasn't released, and the Xbox either. So we were like, okay, where can we go? How far can we go? Let's see. And so we knew that the frustration of the gameplay. I knew the gameplay team, they wanted to enhance this aspect. We wanted to have more open places, and we wanted to have some better facial animations, and we wanted to have more characters, and it was less. I guess the second one is less claustrophobic. It's.
It has plenty of that as well.
Yeah.
There's some real, especially all the kind of hive nest kind of environments are almost like being in an alien planet, and very claustrophobic. But I get what you mean, that there's more open air kind of spaces.
And it's the same with the music. If you listen to the first soundtrack, it's very shallow. It's a lot of tones, drones, and we had a joke with Olivier. It's like one note. I think Olivier wanted to put more notes, more music. And David said, no, keep it simple, keep it on the texture, keep it like Amicia and Hugo relationship, very close, very
intimistic.
Intimistic. And on the second one, we had the opportunity to go larger and try some new stuff, especially for the music, and we have new characters, important characters that help us find the textures and instruments and stuff, and the island, of course, with the choir, where there's a connection to the macula, you go, and this is the choir, and naturally, I think it evolved with the story of the game when Seb and the narrative team they made some. New characters, new places, and the violence, the relation. The second one is about a lot. The beginning of the game is a lot about Amicia's violence, and in the first one, it's more about how she doesn't want to kill. But in the second one, she became a killer.
It's a lot darker.
A killer, and it's making her suffer, and it's about the music. The first part of the game, it's about Amicia and her suffering, and there's some theme about she became totally depressed because she's killing so many people and just some and Olivier is some distillating some piece of depression, and you can hear it at some point, and it's light and it's growing to at the explosion in one level where Amicia kills dozens of people, and that's what it was interesting in the second one is how we use the music and the sound design to make Amicia evolve, and then we have the island part where it's more about Hugo and the relationship with Amicia. So. Yeah, I would say.
It never feels like, how a lot of games cater their sound and music both to the kind of power fantasy idea. If it's a Call of Duty or a game like that where, the weapons are supposed to feel very powerful and they're supposed to make you feel like a badass. They're supposed to really give you that strong feedback of like, I am invincible. And the music is often very kind of heroic in the sense of, if you think about it and kind of psychoanalyze it, it's a little iffy because the music is essentially saying, yeah, all those people, they deserve it. Yeah. I am the hero of this story, and it's not meant to probably be thought about too deeply. But what I love about these games, and especially in the second one, is it never does that. It never feels like this is about glorifying or celebrating this violence. Like obviously the narrative deals with it directly, but even from a sound design standpoint, it's not like you have these super gratuitous over the top death sounds and violent kind of things that might have a different game might have been tempted to do those kinds of sounds or music as well. I don't really think of the music. In fact, I don't really associate the music with heroics at all. I think of it as amplifying when it's scary and amplifying when it's sort of supernatural. And I'm sure there's music, throughout, but those parts seem like those are the priority, especially with the choir. Whose idea was this, the vocals?
Yeah, it's Olivier. He wanted to work with Estonian choir, and he wanted to work with them I think he was in contact with them for many years. I think he wanted to do this for many years, and he said, okay, it's an opportunity to do it. And it was just when we first heard the choir, because obviously we had this contract on the second one. It was not as flexible as on the first one because we had to record in Estonia. And it was COVID, and it was tricky to do the recording because
I didn't even think about that. Yeah. How did COVID affect your workflows just in general? I mean, obviously the game is a lot bigger, so it's probably the worst timing to staff up, and also from a sound pipeline standpoint, often requires people to get together and do things. So how did you manage?
We did our best, I guess. Like every developers did. I mean, we had to go home. Like for 1.5 years, I guess. Then we got back to the studios, and I think it was in 2021. So we had 1 year of production at the studios, I guess. And some people were still working remotely and so on. So yeah, it was hard for us because we were a small team. We know each other. We all know each other. We were used to work together, like seeing every day each other every day. So it was like, wow, okay, we don't see every day. We had to recruit a lot of people to work on the game. I think we were 75, so we grew up from 50 to 75 people. So it's like one third bigger. And
in the audio team, at first we were both, in the end of Innocence. But we have Damien.
We are 3 on the second one. Yeah, so everybody has grown from 1/3, even audio. So So and one of the problem was the recording during COVID. I think we did the recording in January 2022, and scheduling a session during COVID. And I think we had to postpone one session because one of member of the choir had the COVID. So it was a big stress, to be honest, because it was so important for the game, for the story, for everything, because it was making the connection with the island. So if we didn't have the choir, it would have been
And what about the actors? Because that's also its own challenge.
For the actors, I think aside, we started recording the voiceovers late in the process. So we did one vertical slice with all the voices. Like, okay, it's working, it's cool. We know that we can do some cool acting. The actors are the same. They were not a big risk.
Yeah,
we knew the actors, so we weren't really worried about this. So
we have to record a bunch of lines, but we know it will work.
Yeah. So we did the recording. I think COVID was less present in France, so and in the UK too. So there were not so many problems. And as the actors, they record alone in the booth.
Right.
It wasn't so much of a problem.
Well, that's good then.
Yeah. It was more a problem for the choir. Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, choir singing was one of the few known COVID problems. So it's like choirs had it the worst, basically.
Yeah.
And there were a lot of outbreaks associated with choirs. So it was an interesting sort of the one thing you're sort of not supposed to do.
Yeah.
And, I had a similar choir recording session right as the Omicron variant hit London. And it was like we had to space everybody out and do kind of weird recordings. It ended up being really cool because it was very kind of ambient and ethereal where every person had about 2 meters space or 3 meters individually, all just spread. So we used the whole giant room for normally a big orchestra. We had a 30-voice choir all spread through the whole room. And so they had to really listen to each other, but it made for a cool result. Not necessarily ideal, but we made it work because obviously, yeah, it's like, well, we might all die. But this is not the thing I thought would kill me. But were there any big technical challenges associated with because obviously it seems like you solved the biggest challenges with regard to your kind of dynamic rat behaviors in the first one. And that the second one, it didn't change things so dramatically that you would have this whole new. So were you able to mostly kind of leverage what you had and then just need new assets and maybe more polish and that kind of thing? Or was there really something else?
Yeah, so we knew we were next gen. So we had some challenge like, okay, we need to do next gen audio. What is next gen audio? We don't know.
Yeah, so what did that end up being?
I mean, it started by, the 3D audio from Microsoft, Sony, and Sony. Mm-hmm. Okay. On PS4 and Xbox, it was here, but not as good as...
I mean, it's like a marketing selling point of the PS5 in particular.
Yeah, exactly. So we're like, okay, it's sounding really good. It's cool. Okay, we need to use this and how to implement it correctly. And at the time, the PS5 was still not released. And there was not some kind of examples to listen and check how it sounds, how to do it right. Okay, so that's what.
But what were you even trying to leverage the 3D audio for? Because obviously the rats would be the
stealth. Most of it is stealth and immersions. Like, okay, we wanted to feel immersed in the cities, in the French cities. Mm-hmm. I mean, the environment is really beautiful. The artists are so talented, and we wanted to bring our own audio immersion to these environments. And 3D audio was really cool for this. Mm-hmm. Like, okay, you can hear the bird up here. And for the second game, it was in Provence. And in Provence, there's a lot of cicadas. That's a typical French, but there's a lot of cicadas anywhere in the world. But
yeah, we have them here.
But it's the signature of Provence. And we had fun with 3D cicadas.
Whatever it takes. I mean, that's why I'm curious, because often these things are on normal life sounds, and that's what makes it immersive. Like, I'll never forget the first time I saw the Pixar film Monsters, Inc., and the fur looked so real. And it's one of those where you think, it's so trivial. You see like a dog walking down the street and you don't think anything of it. But to see it in animation where it's moving dynamically and all that is mind-blowing. And so I love that, you have this really sophisticated power and you go, we're going to do the cicadas in 3D. This is going to be incredible.
Yeah.
But it makes sense. I mean, it's always that stuff. It's always the things that are more connected to our normal life,
Yeah, we knew we had this tool and we had to use this tool, and it was more okay. How can we use it? We can use it smartly and in interesting ways. And we also have the haptic design that was done by the audio team too, because it's sound design. We were like, okay, we need to do this now. And we had.
I didn't even think about that because I'm a PC gamer by and large, so I played the game on Steam.
Bet you can play it with DualSense.
But yeah, I didn't. I never, unless it's a platformer, I always default to like keyboard and mouse. So I miss out on the proper full on haptic experience as a result. You make me realize, there's a whole element that I overlooked.
Yeah,
to buy it again on my PS5 and experience it properly. I'm sure you guys won't mind.
You can experience the rats in the pad, and it was really fun to. It was new. It was refreshing, and I think we also worked a lot on the acoustic system. We implemented a better acoustics in the game, a more realistic acoustic.
You mean just the kind of more
geometry?
Yeah, the sort of volume reverbs and things. Yeah,
exactly. We send the geometry to the engine and calculate the reverb and stuff. So it was better on the reverb side, and
voices going into portal. Room to room, you can hear someone in the church. You just hear the reverb 3D. So you can localize the reverb. And it was the challenge on this game too.
Yeah. Because we're obsessed with reverb and attenuations, and it's so important. We wanted to have like a natural feeling of the space. I mean, that's one part of the new stuff in Requiem. It's the big environment, and so we wanted to feel the space thanks to reverb, and the game, there's a lot of voice, of VO, and it's always a way of sensing the space with the reverb. So we really pay attention to having different reverbs and stuff in different environments. And
there's a lot that has to be in that dynamic. I mean, like some of the big underground sort of tomb type environments where you've got your voices, like there's plenty of moments where you're isolated away from Hugo. So he's calling to you and you're giving him commands remotely, and there's a sea of rats and it's 100-foot ceiling. So you have a big spacious environment in terms of these impulse response.
Yeah.
But there's a lot that you have to parse in the mix that's actually need to hear it to play the game. So it's an interesting, I imagine that wasn't easy to, I imagine it would be easy to overload and to have just way too much.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was tricky. And like I said, it was, okay, we put music here and we lower the sound effect here because of the music. And there's no music, we can have more sound effect and stuff. So it's kind of finding the right balance depending on the situations.
And we need to hear voices really clearly because it's a narrative game. So every line is important.
100%.
Yeah, it's always the same problem. You have fun with your attenuations. It's sounding so cool, and then the narrative team said, "But we don't understand the line."
Yeah.
So
dialogue is always king.
Put it in 2D, and we obviously didn't want to do this, so we had to find the right balance, find the way of mixing the voiceovers to make them out of the mix without making them too upfront. So these kind of problems to solve.
Well, you did a great job. I'm thrilled. I really hope that you can have a nice night at the awards tonight. Hopefully, receiving accolades for your fine work. Like I said, I was excited to talk to you all because I just am very genuinely a fan of the work. I thought the games are just so immaculately done. The whole department, from or I should say every department. Of course, my friend and colleague Olivier, but also just the way it integrates with sound, the way it's all handled so wonderfully, and it's just a great game. It's one of those that it really does hit the landing of the gameplay. The core game loop is quite fun and quite engaging and always interesting. But it actually has a very worthy story to explore, and that's not so common. Some games are really well written and the gameplay's fine, or more often the gameplay's fun and the story is whatever. But this one, it was one of those that I'm so glad that the excuse to finally play it after hearing about it so much There's just so many games, you know, that the chat with Olivier was the thing that made me do it and turned me into such a fan. So we'll see what the studio does next. But I thank you both. Thanks for coming and agreeing to talk to me.
Thank you.
It was nice.
Very nice to chat with you.